This is my third video in my series on reporting my abusive ex-therapist. In the last video, we listened to some clips from the complaint screening committee meeting, which was the first meeting that I attended. It was just a very stripped down summary of my complaint. The next thing in the process was for me to give a statement that I had prepared ahead of time, and I am going to step outside of my comfort zone and play that for you now. I will provide captions again, and just know that I was highly emotional, so you're going to hear some emotion in my voice.
Until very recently, I operated under the illusion that I was special, that I crossed boundaries just for me because I was special to him, and that this was a one-off case of we met at the wrong time in the wrong place. It's also taken me a long time to be ready to make any move that would permanently end any hope of future contact or friendship with that. That is the guy who showed up at my vet's office when I had to put my cat down, who surprised me at my house on a bad day for a hug, who held on to sonogram pictures of my daughter, painted pictures for her nursery, and called himself her uncle. We texted constantly. He was always there, even in the dead of night when I couldn't sleep. The first time he held me in a session, he said, "Is this what you've wanted all this time?" And I couldn't imagine ever wanting anything else ever again. If I were telling you these things about any other person, you would say, "Wow, what an incredible friend." I still struggle with understanding how his being my therapist and not just a friend changes things. But Scott was my therapist, and I saw and paid him 2 to 3 times a week for therapy for nearly 3 years, sometimes more as I became increasingly more dependent on him. Every time I would come to him with a fear or struggle, he presented himself as the answer. He told me I didn't have to worry about whatever it was because he would always be there to help me with it, that he would never leave me, and I believed him. My world shrank until he was my world, and nothing else mattered as much as my relationship with him. I have no idea how my marriage survived. I lost all of my friends. I completely stopped socializing. I canceled vacations out of anxiety of being away from him and lost thousands of dollars. I struggled to perform at my job because it required I travel away from him, and the list goes on to include various forms of serious. None of these things were an issue at the beginning of my therapy with Scott, and all of them resolved after fully cutting off contact with him. After I ended contact with him, I would still occasionally search his name because he told me he had a very serious medical issue, and I would periodically check for obituaries because I couldn't bear the idea of him dying and my not knowing about it. So that's how I discovered the other complaint filed against him. I read the description, and it was like reading my own story, and I realized then that I wasn't special, that he'd gone on to do this again immediately after moving to Arizona and while still maintaining his friendship with me. I then discovered and listened to the recordings of the proceedings with my therapist and heard tell the board that he had never had an emotional relationship with a client and did not maintain social contact with former clients. And for the first time ever, I knew what he was saying wasn't true. So much of our relationship was full of this crazy-making confusion where I'd call him out on not being honest about things, but he would always have an excuse, or he'd tell me that it was in my head, and I'd eventually believe him. But this time, I knew what he was saying wasn't true because I exist. And on top of that, I asked him repeatedly throughout our entire relationship if what we were doing was okay, if I should be transferred, if we should terminate, and he always told me it was okay. But here he was concealing our friendship from the board, which means he knew it wasn't okay. Otherwise, why would he hide it? That's why I'm reporting him now. I would probably never have reported had I not found the other complaint, but now I know that I was not special, that I was not the last person he did this to, and very likely not the first. But I am hoping I can help ensure that this does not happen to anyone else again. That's all I have.